Do you have a tea for us, Faf?
Not yet, Alfred. I'm sorry. We're talking about a few combinations. Not sure if you want to make a change yet, but if there is a change, there'll probably be one change, but it's still up in the talks.
Have you had a look at the pitch?
Yes.
And what do you think?
I think it's a very typical PA wicket. Touch on the slow side with a little bit of grass on it. So I think the new ball will be important. And then later on the test match will spin a bit and probably stay a little bit lower. Reverse swing generally plays a role here as well, but that is very depending on what's happening upstairs with the clouds and the moisture.
You're saying you're talking about a few combinations. Can you tell us which department that's in or which side of the team you're looking to play?
Yeah, it's obviously Temba and Tianis, weighing up where Temba is coming from a long injury, coming from a layoff, whether he comes back into the team. So that's something we're talking about. And just from a bowling combination point of view, checking what can we do to always look to get wickets. So just the combination of the team with the balance and stuff. But yeah, I would assume not more than one change.
Is Temba batting pain-free?
I think he's batting pain-free. It's just the power in the hand that it's still getting that back. Obviously, a little bit different to us with our finger injuries, that you can take your finger a little bit off the bat. Your hand is always on the bat. So as far as I understand, he's pain-free. It's just the power of the hand is probably at about 80%.
Okay, so Faf, been a bit distracting over the past few days. How are you getting your team to focus? Because, I mean, if you look at the social media feedback, the fans just want you to win.
I think it's the norm for me when you play against Australia. So it's just about getting us ready for a test match. It's a big game for us. We need to make sure that our cricket does the talking. We've spoken behind doors about lessons learned and just trying to improve them because it's, as I said, it's big for us. We need to make sure that we get back in the series 1-0.
You mentioned just there, and you mentioned a few times that you sort of expect this stuff when you play against Australia. Do you have less respect for Australia than you do for other teams that you come across because of the way?
No. I think respect. I have a lot of respect for every single team that we play against, and certainly the style of play that team comes with is probably the style of play they believe that they need to play at. So when you play a team like New Zealand, they're the nice guys. They're really friendly and they don't believe they need to play like that. And they're obviously a team that gets results in the way that they play. Us as a team, very similar. Me as a captain don't see much value in what you say on the field making impact on the performances that you do have as a team. For me, it's about focusing on what kind of presence you have as a team, what your body language is like, being positive. So it's not our style of play, but as I said before, that's probably that Australia believes that's the way that they are the best team that they can be, is by being that sort of team.
With Warner, you've got the Australians said beforehand, before the series, that with Kigeso having a couple of demerit points, that they would actually be taking note of that. I mean, is that with Warner on the edge now? Is that something that you would try and provoke a reaction out of you?
I didn't think of it before the series, but I did hear that yesterday. It's probably a little bit smart by being like that. If you can entice someone to make a mistake, to get them missing the rest of the series, that's probably a tactical move. But before we came into the series, when I looked at all the demerit points, all of it was on the South African team side. There wasn't much on the Australian team. So now that it's happened, it's possibly an angle that we can look to get to. But once again, for me, it's more about your presence as a player than the stuff that comes out of your mouth.
You spoke about how New Zealand play and how Australia play, and you said it before, you guys wanting to play the game hard, but Oates came out yesterday and he was questioning that mythical line. What is your stance on where that line exists and who creates it?
Yeah, once again, I don't think certainly as a captain of the team, we don't look to push that line. We don't look to find the grey areas. For me, it's very obvious. We try and play a positive brand of cricket with very good body language, intensity of you look the guy in the eye and you show them that you're here to play today and that you compete and that you try and win a game of cricket. If you look in the past, we're not a team that flirts with that line when it comes to vocals, so we just focus on trying to make the cricket do the talking.
Speaking about the line, does that line exist? Like, who owns the line?
I don't know who owns that line. Definitely not us.
Faf, how important is it for you guys as senior members to make runs rather than relying on the juniors?
Sorry, I just missed that part, sorry.
No, I'm saying, how important is it for you guys as senior members, to make runs rather than relying on the youngsters?
No, very important. It's always important. I'll be the first guy to always say that in big series you need your big players to stand up. So there's no doubt about the fact that big players didn't perform in the first test, and that's the reason why Australia won it. So it's as simple as that for me. It's not for me relying on youngsters to perform. For me, it's about you need everyone to step up to the plate, but especially in big games, you need your big players to score runs.
Faf, given what's happened in the days after the Durban Test, and particularly some of the sort of counter accusations from the Australians, what's the mood of your fast bowlers? Are they sort of eating raw meat?
Yeah, I suppose it's been fun and games. Credit to you guys to making it a little bit more spicy. But certainly the mood in the camp doesn't change much. For me, our style of play will be the same. Yes, it does make the blood pump a little bit because it makes you want to get back on the field and perform against a quality Australian team. But for me, it's what makes you best as a player. Every guy has something different that makes him tick. Yeah, but the guys are ready to go for this test.
Believe it or not, hopefully we can move on. But just one, what were you hoping to achieve by appealing against Quinny? I wasn't quite sure what the motivation was.
No, for me it was just more the stance of that for a long period of time. If you know Quinton's character, you know that he's a very, very quiet guy. He doesn't say a word. I struggle to get a word out of him on the field. So I know he's a very, very relaxed, laid-back guy. So the point leading up to that would have been a lot of stuff said to Quinton and a lot of personal stuff. Once again, that line with where personal is can be talked about. But I thought he actually handled himself well in terms of all the stuff that was said to him, and he walked off the field, and eventually he reached a point where he said enough is enough. And I think any guy in the world, depending on how far you push them, eventually they're going to say something back. So he said something back, and for me it was just for them to understand that there's a lot of things that happened before that moment, and I just wanted to get that point across to them to see if maybe they understand that that's the case. But according to them, your actions are still, at the end of the day, you need to be accountable for that, and that's fine.
I suppose you're talking about getting that point across. Is this like chatting you have with Steve in the match referee? Are you hoping that drawing this line that you can get some common ground and say these are the things he said and this is why he said?
Yeah, for me, it's as I said. I'm not expecting Australia to change their style of play. They're a team that's always done it, and they will always do it. They're not going to change that overnight. They've always had characters within their team, and it's not even the whole team. It's probably just 2 or 3 guys that always, you could see that's almost their job in the team, to go that route. So for me, it will just be to make sure that if you have guys in your team that are pushing that line, that as a captain, you make sure that you can keep them calm and that things don't get to a stage where they got to in the previous game. And if the captain's not close by, then that role will fall onto the umpires to make sure that if they see that there's someone that's continuously trying to get a reaction out of a player. I don't have an issue with chirping, not at all. I think chirping is good for the game. It's just what you say is, I suppose, where we talk about that line.
Well, this is one of those irritating cricket questions. We saw Aiden Markram play an innings that could define him as a player at Kingsmead. And we saw you do the same thing at Adelaide all those years ago. Is that a good thing from a player's point of view, or are there pitfalls? I know you've seen as a okay, can bat all day, but maybe not score quickly, those kind of. How do you see the context of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's massively a turnaround for Aiden. Everyone knows that he's a very, very quality or high quality cricketer. There were still critics out there that said he only performed against weak opposition. For me, if you score runs, you have to score runs against the opposition that you play. So we already knew that it was there. But for himself to get over that bridge to score a very, very good 100 in a high pressure environment just refers back to his character, and that's one of the reasons why we see the potential in him to lead the team, because he's got that ability to take on more than most guys can. So yeah, it's really good for his own game and a future going for South African cricket.
I was going to ask you about the umpires, but instead I'll ask you about Dale Steyn the last time he was here and a great reverse swinging spell. And have you guys had contact with him and maybe spoken to him about conditions? And I don't know how close he is to coming back, but has he had any input so far?
He hasn't had any input towards the team. I think, there's quite a lot of knowledge in our dressing room with what is required for reverse swing bowling. As I said, for me, generally, the big role that plays a part is what's happening upstairs. Generally, if it's cloudy and wet and overcast, it's tricky to get the ball to reverse. It's when you get that dry wind that blows across and the ball gets really dry, that's an opportunity to reverse swing the ball. So Dale is just a master of bowling with the reverse swinging ball, and there's only a handful of players, as we spoke about after the previous test. He's one of those guys that can rip through a batting attack and certainly the tail.
So Faf, we saw how important the tail end was in the last test.
Yeah.
I saw you giving some advice to KG and actually analysing Keshav. So how much input have you had on their batting style and what sort of advice have you given them?
No, we as a top 7 also try and take learning of where we can get better and with the mistakes that we made and the things that we picked up. And there was a few things being discussed after the first innings, the learnings that we got from the mistakes that we made. So from my point of view, it's just important to try and get that across to the tail as well, that these are the things we're working on as a top 7, and it's crucial that you understand what we're talking about, and just explaining that to them in a little bit more basic terms, because batting sometimes can be very technical and you want to make it as simple as possible, especially for your bowlers. Just to have a clear game plan of what they're trying to do and practice like that, and hopefully if you practice that way, then it will be a little bit easier in the game.
Yes, good.
Possibly just following on from that, but you mentioned the impact on Aiden personally of his innings, but for the team as a whole on that fourth day, batting so much better and actually dealing with Nathan Lyon and Mitchell Stark pretty well until right into the end.
Yeah.
How much of a lift has that given the team as a whole?
No, there was. Although we lost the game, and it was very disappointing that we lost. But for me, there was real positives out of that game. Australia is a team that do rely on how well Nathan Lyon bowls, and I feel as a South African team, we've played him well in the past. Even both innings he was going above 3, so that he's a massive weapon for them. So we got through that hurdle on a turning pitch. The learnings was obviously from Starkey's bowling. He bowled really well and he got the ball to tail. So the angle is more something we spoke about, as he comes from a really wide angle, wider than you would expect from a normal bowler, and it's just about making and adapting to that and try and counter that.